Doesn't sound very good.
Will now be recorded.
Oh, everybody straight.
Afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon,
Wayne.
Martin.
Good afternoon.
Hello,
I thought it was gonna be late, but I made it on time. So
good.
Here we are. Okay, we'll have a call to order. Confirmation of agenda. Be resolved that the committee confirm the agenda was presented. Second, mover and seconder, please. Yay. Thank you. And any declaration of pecuniary interest, you can say it now or during the meeting. And with delegations and presentations, there are none. I think I've got Wayne to bug. Adoption of minutes. Be resolved that the committee approved the minutes from the September 16th, 2021 Recreation Advisory Committee meeting as presented. Any questions over those minutes? Hearing none, I need a mover and seconder.
I think the minute taker can just, Wayne and I can
We'll
just
go
trade about.
Yeah, that sounds good. Okay, carried. Number 7 is recreation updates and facility manager reports. So that's you, Kevin.
Yeah, so the first one in it's the program, what do we call it? Master plan, programming plan. So this is sort of the document that started 5 years ago when we had the grant opportunity to develop our master plans. So this one's kind of spurred off it. And this is the plan, and Ethan's on the meeting here, that we're building towards programming in the community and at least identifying it and trying to get some momentum behind it that we can get our budget up to 22% of the tax dollars. So this is a pretty important document, but
Let it go, Kevin, let it go.
We don't really spend a lot of time on it, but there's enough time on it. I bring it up every year, and this is sort of the meeting we bring it up going into budget time or whatever, just to give you an idea where we're at. I'm not going to go through the whole document, but you can see the programs we've had in the past, the programs that are ongoing, kind of the facility usage. Again, we're not maxed out by any means, but the important ones is page 17 of the agenda pack, which would be the first one I start. And I'm going to give Ethan a chance to toot his horn a little bit after here with the document too, but there's 2 points that I really want to bring out. So if you could get to the pool revenue page, so that should be 17 of 36. So I don't know how to share my screen, so no sense even let me do it, Alicia. So
do you want me to pull it up for you, Kevin?
If you can, just they can see it, but I think everyone has it. But
yeah, I have it in front of me here.
So 2019, that was pre-COVID. Our lessons were bringing in around 3,000, and that I never broke down the other number, or yes, I did bring down the numbers. Sorry, I redid this page to actual numbers, because when I looked at it, it didn't look right. So yeah, there's no sense bringing it up because I had the actual numbers plotted in here this morning and didn't put it in. So 2019, because the numbers were there, but the revenues didn't match. So the 266 in lessons equal about 15,000 in lessons, 1,600 in rentals, and 1,000 in the advanced courses. So that's when we ran the lessons, not the privates. That's kind of pre-COVID. So COVID year, where we ran a shorter season, lessons brought in 12,000, almost 13,000. Rentals were 750, and the advanced courses were 1,260. So we had a learning curve in that year on what private lessons would do and the programming in the pool. So this year, 2021, and that's where the revenue numbers are wrong in there. So lessons at 299 is how many lessons we put through in privates. That actually brought in $19,411. The rentals, 24 was 1,700, but big difference that Chloe did was the advanced courses. So she brought in the National Life Instructors and a few courses that we usually send people to Hanover. That brought in 4,625. So just by changing a wee bit and reaping the benefit of maybe a larger community. So that pool operating deficit usually runs in around 28,000 a year. This summer it come in at 8,333 operating deficit. Now there's two keys to that. One is the increased lessons, obviously, and the increased courses. That brought in 8,000 increase in revenues. But we also did get a grant for wages. So I hope we get the grant again, but we may not. That was $9,000 savings. So just, that's a good year we had in the pool. That's our best year in 25 years that I've been around. So it's just shows that, you know, a bit of creative programming could result in some revenues. So that's the success story on the pool. So the next page I want
Okay.
to bring to your
Can I ask,
attention.
Kevin,
Yep.
sorry to interrupt. Can I ask you a question about that?
Yep.
So was the pool operational any longer or shorter in terms of time frame in those 3 years? Like, was there much
Oh.
variation?
The 2020, the reason it's only, the lessons are a little lower is because we didn't start till middle of June. We were almost 3 weeks late with the COVID.
Right.
But we ran that year. So there was a pile of pools that didn't run that year. And we had a big pool meeting. And the head of the whole area, Bert from Hanover, I didn't even realize she was going to do it, but she put me on the spot because I was the only outdoor pool that ran in 2020. And so there was a million questions by everyone. How'd you do it? How'd you do it? How much did you lose? And I said, I didn't really lose. I actually come out better because of going to private lessons. And I said, the public really took to the private lessons and almost enjoyed them more because it was one-on-one, or, you know, they felt they got pretty good value for their dollar, even though it was only a 1 week course, but it was one-on-one instruction. So by opening this year in our normal time frame, June 9th to the last week in August, so a full run at these private lessons, you know, brought us in an extra $4,000 in revenue in private lessons. So you know, COVID did help
and
maybe look at things a little different, but you know,
Yeah.
and the community responded or was very receptive to it.
And do you think we max out the amount of time we have available? Like, did we have to turn anybody away, I guess, in terms of private lessons?
We almost did. So
Yeah.
what we ended up doing was semi-promoting one of the instructors or one of the lifeguards who kind of had their courses or got their courses 2 weeks in, 3 weeks in. And yes, we moved a lot of lessons to the evening that we never did in the past. So yes, we did have to go more time, and that's a bit of the grant money kind of skews how much more money we had to pay to gain this revenue versus, hey, yeah, we just got a windfall of revenue. It didn't cost us any more to run. So,
Right.
you know, the trade-off is probably, yeah, we maybe only made over and above 2,500 that we could have saved on the guards, but the community usage certainly
Responded.
expanded on the pool.
Right.
Okay.
Wow, that's pretty impressive, I have
It
to
is.
say.
It is.
Very
When I started looking at, when I started questioning the numbers, and yeah, I looked into it closer, it was like, yeah, Chloe did an amazing job last year. And And like I said, the biggest revenue was bringing in the advanced courses to our pool versus having the kids go take them elsewhere. Because I know they were hard to get this year because a lot of pools didn't open early. So some of these advanced courses, we were actually drawing kids in as far as Brampton to take them. But
Wow.
Really?
we make money on them. That's so.
Yeah.
So hopefully, I think Chloe's coming back again. I'd really like to get more of an operational plan on that we can maybe do that more often or into the future when she leaves.
Okay. Kevin, with things kind of getting back to normal, can you see this trend continuing next year and the year after?
We'll have to look at it because like I said, the pool was pretty much maxed out on the lessons on the private. So if the demand comes back that we're looking back at 10 kids in a class to get more kids through it, obviously we make more money on the privates than we do 10 in the class. Now, if the class is maxed out, we should make more money. But in the past, we've been running, some classes may only have 4 kids in it. Some classes may have the 10. So, it'll be the pool's work in progress for probably the next couple of years again to see where how big the community grows.
Mm-hmm. Good.
Cool.
So, and the next thing in the program plan that's updated annually, if you go to page
Sorry
20.
to interrupt again.
Oh,
Ethan had
yep.
a point there.
Yep, Ethan?
Sorry, I just thought of this now, Kevin. Is there any way to reach out to those user groups and assess whether they preferred private versus the group lessons? Because swimming is a skill that has fallen by the wayside, and I have a sneaking suspicion that there are people that are nervous to be in bigger groups and more comfortable with private lessons. So along with the one-on-one better instruction, I think maybe just sort of a social aspect of it, even for ones that are swimming.
I agree with you, Ian. Ethan.
And that's all the feedback I got since has been the privates is the way to go. I think everybody, all the parents, everybody talking to our head guards said the same thing, that the privates seem to be, certainly the way to go. And money seems to still be there. Now we didn't, we held the private price, which some people balked at a little bit, but once they seen the value of the one-on-one, nobody ever questioned the price of a private lesson over the classes. So I would expect this is be closer to more the standard operating procedures going forward, but we do have to consider the lower income families that maybe can't afford the private. So I would think we will probably stay 80-20, 80% privates, 20% public.
Okay. Kevin, what exactly is the fee then? Is it comparable to other areas, or is our price a good price for the private?
We held it. So like we didn't up the rec fees last year. So I would say we're, anytime I've done the market research on our fees and charges, we've been pretty close. All depends where you come from too. Like people coming in, yep. Some people say, holy cow, that's too expensive. And some people don't, but usually where you get and where the privates created the problem was if you had more than 2 kids. So in the past, we always had the family rate that made almost the third kid free, third child free in the lessons, because the other 8 kids were basically paying for that one child. So that's kind of where if you had a family of 3 or 4, the group lessons classes were certainly cheaper and more economical for that family versus the private. So that's kind of where we do have to kind of keep that group classes in there just for those families that just may not be able to afford the private lesson rate for each individual kid.
Yeah. Okay. Before we move on, Wayne, do you have any questions or?
No, that sounds good.
Okay. Yep. Okay, Kevin.
We'll be happy when we build the new pool in the new subdivision over in Langton. We can pass.
We'll negotiate for that.
New road?
So the next place I'd like to draw your attention to then is page 23 of 36. So this is our revenue program results and goals. So 2018, I think, was when Ethan started in there. So the first year of Ethan being here, we brought in 3,000 over and above what we would have. 2019, it expanded to the number of participants, and then unfortunately COVID hit. And so the COVID 2020, because it hit in March, we ended up with the Learn to Skate program, I believe, from January to March. And Ethan did get a soccer program in there last year. Correct me if I'm wrong, Ethan, but I think that's what we got in.
I was able to do a half year before the shutdown last year for Learn to Skate, and the last 2 years we were able to do soccer, but 2 years ago modified version of it. This year was more, I know I'm jumping ahead, but this year was more of a what it could be.
Yeah, so dollar wise, 2020, that ICE program before COVID brought in $6,000. The soccer program during COVID, even as modified it was, still brought in 1,000. So the revenue for that year was 6,880. So last year we lost the spring hockey program, and we didn't get our ball hockey program, we didn't get our basketball program, but we got our soccer program. So in the fall, we have the arena program. So the arena revenue is probably a little light, I think, at the 2,000, but it may not be just because of the timing of this report. But so 2021, we brought in 6,465, but that is not running. So the next comment is where we're going with our programming. But so the arena program is running about 100 kids, 10-week program, and we charge $50. Soccer program was a 10-week program. We charged $50 for the program, and we brought in 3,000, almost 4,000. So every program we run, every 10-week program that we're running, charging $50. If we have 100 kids registered in it, we're making $5,000 less. I shouldn't say that. Take 13% off it because we don't charge HST over and above. We usually include the HST in the 50. So this 6,465 is on 2 programs. So this year, or going into next year's budget, 2020, we should have 2 full seasons of the Learn to Skate program. So 2 10-week sessions, one January to March, and then October till Christmas on the budget. We will have the ball hockey program hopefully back. Soccer program will certainly double in size, I expect. Ethan can talk a little bit more of these programs after. Basketball program may be back, and the 2 hockey ones. So that's 5 programs at $5,000. That's $25,000 we'll be bringing in programming when we get up and running. That's $25,000 we've never had. So that's the value of the programming position and where we're going. So, and that's kind of all I wanted to talk about it. So I'll let Ethan kind of take you through what he wants to talk about or what he's thinking about the program plan while he's got your ear.
Ethan, may I ask, with all these programs you're running, how many volunteers do you have? Do you have parents helping out, or do you have other? It can't be just you.
Permanently and regularly, it is me. I generally have 1 to 2 students helping me whether that be the same students for multiple programs, whether it be two or three different students and sort of trade off weekends. So for example, the Learn to Skate last year that we ran, I had two that generally flip-flop weekends, but when they could both be there, were there. So it's also, these are also excellent opportunities to get community service hours for high school students. There's a large portion of that school that has my signature in their books for all the service they help and provide. But yeah, if, again, they're volunteers as well too. So if they have prior commitments or things like that, and the parents are great for willing to step in and help and whenever we need anything, but for the most part, it is myself and whatever volunteers, primarily students, are willing to be there and available. So to answer that question, yes, primarily myself, but I do have excellent help, and I seem to be getting more interest from a variety rather than constantly pulling from the same pool of volunteer students.
That's always, because burnout's possible even for kids, right? So yeah, I tip my hat off to you, Ethan. That's fantastic. Anyway,
The next
Kevin?
follow-up question to that then, in case Ethan doesn't head that way, and we discussed this at his job evaluation, under those volunteers and everything, are the programs at max, or what is our capability to expand those programs?
It'd be interesting to see if we had a year where we could run all of those programs in sequence the way we want to run them. But the last, and because we divide it in age groups, there's portions of the programs that are maxed. So for example, in that 81 participants this summer for soccer, about 60 of them were under the age of 6. So the age 2 to 3, 4 and 5, and 6 and 7 groups were maxed with the help that I had, and still well run, but thin whenever the volunteers weren't there. But for the older groups, definitely not maxed out. But it's also a population that even when we're not maxed out at those groups, it's important to keep them involved, because those are the kids that in 2 years I get phone calls of people saying, what is there for my teenager to do and stuff. So even if we don't max out a program for 11, 12-year-olds, it's still important to run those. Obviously, with the caveat being we're not running it for 2 or 3 kids to do soccer, because then it's just not feasible, but also making sure that we provide that so those kids come back and maybe bring a friend and that group grows, and they're not the ones that we're worried about smashing beer bottles at the skate park because there's nothing for them to do and they're bored and things like that. So there's a max out for certain age groups in the programs, and I would say almost across the board in the age groups that we do for, I would say, 8 years old and younger, and still room to improve capacity and fill more spaces for probably 9 and older. And that varies within a year here and there, depending on which program it is. So our basketball program service probably more older kids than younger, but that's also a little bit of a reflection of the skills required to play that sport.
Mm-hmm. Very good. Ethan, go ahead, Ron. No, I was just going to say, go ahead, Ron.
I was going to ask, is there capacity for more programming instead of increased what you're already doing, but is there, like, for a different course?
So in an ideal world, yes, there's a lot of sort of niches that we're not necessarily filling. Like, we're hitting sort of the big sports that are traditionally participated in, but there's other aspects that we're not necessarily getting, like, but also trying to find out how that would fit in. So in our plan, in the programming plan, we do have ideas for things that we want to do. So for example, I'd like to get more use out of the tennis courts, the basketball courts that are primary, but we have tennis equipment that we've invested in, not a substantial amount by any means, but it's a program that I think would gain a lot of participation, but due to the nature of that sport, you're not going to get, like soccer, 10 kids out on a field or 15 kids out on a field, right? You're going to max out a program on like that at 8, depending on what you can do, what amenities you can use along playing with that court. So maybe tying into something like that, doing a racket club version where instead of looking at splitting up badminton, pickleball, and tennis, you incorporate them all. So you look at maybe doing, instead of a 10-week program, you look at maybe doing 3 consecutive 8-week programs based on what your seasons are, and they sign up for that whole 24-week period, but it's divided through those 3 sports. And that's just one way to look at it. If there's enough interest in a racket club or a badminton club and it's feasible to run by itself, then, right, because there's more capacity when you have multiple courts as well and multiple time slots.
Right.
But definitely there are other things. There's a few other things on the dock that aren't necessarily sport related, but are rec related. I hoped to try to initiate and run a leadership course for youth and teens this summer, but just there was no time. We ran a partnership program that some of you maybe saw in that document called Food Fit, and that was in partnership with Southeast Grey Community Health, who had a grant to provide a program that was based around health and nutrition, and they supplied all the food and everything like that, and the staff to do the lunchtime thing. And we ran four single days on consecutive weeks in August. And we charged the fee for that, and that came into rec as well. But that was a partnership program, and things like that are really great, that are not necessarily single sport specific, but also target broader active and healthy lifestyle choices.
Mental health stuff.
Right. And not even mental health stuff, just physical health stuff, just getting outside. And whether you play an organized sport or not, or just we went and played on the jungle gym for an hour, which a lot of these kids don't do even once a week type of thing, right? And doing multi-sport and trying new things and group games and stuff like that. Now, COVID still had an impact on that with what we could do with close proximity of things we could do there, but that program ran well, and it was a good program, but it wasn't near the capacity that it could. So there's definitely room for growth in what we currently run, and room for growth in the variety of stuff we could potentially run. But where's the line before things start getting spread too thin, especially when you look on versus running a single day program versus running your 10-week program. So for example, the logistics of that is basically every Monday, I'm already thinking about Saturday.
Right. So I guess where I was going with that line of thinking, what I was thinking was your limiting factor. What I'm hearing is your limiting factor is help. So if you had another, and don't put this in the minutes, but if you had another full-time equivalent there, you've got all kinds of capacity physically, like equipment wise, space wise, all that. You just need the help.
Yes, and the time, right? If there were 9 days in a week, right, we could do more too. But that's also the thing, like Kevin alluded to, with building towards the future of a programmer and things like that capacity, right? Because in the current situation, my position, the time is divided, right? So even trying to operate and then run programs type of thing.
Right.
And it works.
No,
And for
I
what
get
we're doing, it works. But yeah, you're absolutely correct, Brian. Part of the capacity limits are on the staffing too, because I have to take into account what happens if that volunteer isn't able to come that week, right?
Right.
Because
Right.
based in not, because I know it's important that we look at the service that we provide, the quality of program we provide, and the revenue that comes in from it. There's all the factors, but I also refuse to run a program that's not well run and not safe because we tried to get more people than we could handle in it.
No, absolutely,
Good point.
absolutely. And I'm certainly not looking to put 22% of the budget into recreation, but with more help, there's, sort of the sky's the limit, right? Okay.
Well, and along with more help comes more outreach, right? Like there's a lot of return participation in our program. So for soccer, I will see, I don't know a percentage on it. Actually, the better example would be skating to soccer. I would see probably 50 to 60% of my learn to skate participants come to soccer. And then probably 40% of that come to basketball. So as much as we are getting lots of participation, there's still a vast population that hasn't been tapped into, whether it be individuals that have moved to the community or individuals that are already here, just because we couldn't support doing that at a time, right? Like I'd love to have as many people come and it be as accessible as possible to do that. But if I all of a sudden get 300 kids registered for soccer, and we're trying to run it on a Saturday, that makes for a
Good problem.
long Saturday, right?
Oh yeah.
Right.
Thank you.
Because you'd have to divide them into more. At the very least, you'd have to divide them into more groups to keep the group sizes smaller. So instead of 2 groups of 2 and 3 year olds and 4 and 5 year olds, you're looking at 4 for each of those.
Right.
Okay.
Which,
Kevin?
I mean, going forward is kind of a good problem to have.
Right. Yep.
So
Yeah,
with
you end
that,
up
just a
Kevin?
short answer. 40 hours a week, just to make the committee understand how many hours you put into programming versus operations.
Now, you're talking planning and prep and setup and takedown, or just running program?
Prior to the last 3 months, you were what, 50-50?
Yeah. If that, and that's me trying really hard to, and that's not including me sort of sitting at home running through scenarios of what programs got to look like. And right, even I know it sounds a little strange, but the mental side of just running through what it takes to run programs, because you can write it down all you want and logistically plan, but it really is, you got to be flexible to do that, because I find out on Wednesday that volunteers not coming, right? So I got to organize another volunteer, so things like that. So 50-50 is yes, but trying hard to keep it at that versus trying.
Where I'm into. That was 3 months ago. Last 3 months, once the ice got put in, what's the percentage now? 70-30 to programming, 30 to operations. So where I'm leading towards is yes. I heard a counselor last night going on in the meeting about hiring assistants to assistants and a whole bunch of things. And I've had a counselor discuss that we need to be taking grass cutting off and tendering it off and that. So I needed that counselor or this committee to understand that, yes, we are heading down a path, but there is a need. But I think you understand kind of where we're trying to head this discussion to.
Yeah. Present company excluded, right?
You've always supported it well, but I just wanted whenever you said, how are you doing? I said, okay, maybe we finally got that Brian turning the corner here. But with
I
that
play
said,
to the audience. I play to the audience in front of me, Kevin. I'm on the political side. Don't ever forget that.
yeah,
But that said, to be fair, I've always said that staff's job, in part, is to make my job easy to say yes to their requests. So the better you do your job at selling what you need for the community's benefit, the easier it is for me to say yes. We all win,
and
right?
that's where I'm heading, because I understand that that's your position's been that way for 10 years. And so with that said, it's now balancing the timeline of when we can do it, when we can afford it, when do we take the next step. So what this has all been kind of leading towards is trying to figure out when that next step kicks in. So, and that's Dave's been, I thought Dave would be on the call by maybe now too, because we've been discussing it and the future and where we're going, and same part of Ethan's job appraisal is the next step. With that said, I have to balance the rec department too on operations versus programming to make it work. If I heavy load programming, operations is going to fall
Suffer.
behind, or
Suffer.
you create conflict. So 90% of the municipalities that don't have that lead person, programming and operations fight like cats and dogs because they're fighting for the same money. So that's the balancing act. So the first step will likely be either tendering the grass out is in our plan, such as Brian has suggested before. And that gives Ethan another 20 hours a week for programming. But we will be going after that very junior position that we used to have before. So that junior position used to come in and pay band 14, I believe, 13 down at the bottom where it was a casual or part-time arena attendant slash programmer, program assistant or something. But I'm not sure when I'm pushing for that position, but just to lead towards what we're thinking is that we need that position in the future down at the bottom. We're not hiring at the top. We're certainly not, I wasn't looking at elevating the staff that was here to ridiculous positions. But the first step is certainly either eliminating the grass cutting and getting that support staff down at the bottom, just because we did have that problem already. Ethan was sick on a Saturday. We had to cancel a whole program because we didn't have that support staff. And the problem is this, if we're relying on the person at the top to be the support staff, which is kind of what we did in the past. So if somebody was sick, I'd come in and I'd run the arena. Well, I'm not coming in and I don't have the expertise or whatever, or even the knowledge of the soccer programs that Ethan's running, because that would be basically me running them with Ethan, and Ethan's a programmer taking the program side. So as far as the programs Ethan's running, he tells me what he's doing. I support them. We work on them. But when it comes to operating, I have no idea what we're doing. So to expect me to be the support to keep that program going, it's not going to work. So yes, I'm trying to steer Brian to the point where he's saying 22% of the budget should go to rec. But anyways, just know that that's in the future and the way we're heading. That's kind of why I wanted Ethan on the line and to sell his programs, that there is value to the community, that when we do take that jump, that yes, I have enough information you understand my information that, yes, council does have a pretty easy job in justifying the changes to the rec department.
And that will be in the near future, that position. And
Well, it may and may not be, because we do
well,
have.
it should be in the near future by the sound of it.
Well, our programmer's taking maternity leave on us, so
The
potentially
nerve, the
delayed
nerve.
a little bit of the plan, but it still actually incorporates into the plan. But
So question for you, Ethan, before you say what you have to say. If you do have a person full-time helping you, you were talking about the leadership program that you were wanted to do too. Could you, with another helper, with you, and then some of the people you have through the leadership program, you could potentially have a really vibrant core that you can rely on.
So yeah, that basically sums up part of the reason why I also want to run that program. One, it's to empower those kids and give them the skills that they need, kind of whether they're in high school, whether they're helping with programs, whether they're getting jobs, all of that, because it's going to help them be stronger members of the community. But it also is a program that's inherently built to, for lack of a better term, create future employees or volunteers, right? If, for example, if we ended up getting to a spot where we were doing summer students or things like that, you've essentially built in a training program for potential applicants into something like that, right? It's that is a portion. It's not the sole goal by any means, but yes, it creates a cycle of competent individuals that are willing and engaged and have the capacity to run a program up. Now, the issue with that is too, right? These youth are on the younger side, right? It's not like I'm getting a pile of 18, 19-year-olds that are giving their time to help run programs. It's closer to the 14, 15, 16-year-olds. And by that, I can't leave them to run a program if I'm away.
No.
Right?
Yeah.
So it's nice for the support help and what they're gaining and what I'm gaining and working together to do that. But by no means am I able to, or by no means do I have anyone there to take the reins if I can't be there, even if they knew exactly what to run or how to run, right? Just it's not safe practice.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Anyway, you were going to say something before I interrupted you.
So yes, going back to Brian's comment about capacity and moving forward and doing that too, along with this part of the process with working towards a programmer position or something like that, depending on how long it is for the future, our capacity for new and more programs gets sort of limited depending on how I have to manage what we're able to do. So if, say for instance, we have the current structure of how it is, I don't know how much time or capacity I have myself to be able to run more programs or run different programs without being spread too thinly. So as far as long-term goals towards building programs, the position that we're looking towards building sort of needs to progress in order for us to hit that next level of increased programming and increased variety of programming, or else we do run the risk of being spread too thin, or like Kevin pointed out, the situation where I was sick and I couldn't run program on Saturday, so we had to shut it down. And even the logistics of that canceling that morning takes
Time.
hour and a half, 2 hours to make sure that program is not right. And that's the other realities to that as well.
Okay.
Now, and that being said, also within what I've been doing and prep for programs and stuff is basically a program portfolio that outlines all the programs that we currently run, want to run, have aspirations of doing in the future. So for example, if there was somebody, or I had a volunteer who was 18 or 19 that was helping me, I could say, here's the binder, have a read through. This is what you need to be able to run it, right? From my background in running camps and outdoor ed and things like that, having that structural manual makes all the difference in the world to help whoever it is. So I could hand that in theory to Kevin to run a program, but because he's not there involved and knowing the flow and how the program goes and knowing the family and who's there and things like that, right? It still wouldn't be putting him in an ideal situation. Yep. Right? So you also need, so that program portfolio comes along with also needing somebody who is been present or can step in and be able to run it effectively and efficiently based on how it's been running.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So do you want to move on then, Kevin?
Oh, yeah, I think unless there's no more questions on the programming side, that's the gist of it anyways, that, you know, we're starting to create success with them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and financially as well.
Sorry, last thing for me. I know a lot of this revolves around the budget and the finance and the income and stuff, but there really needs to be an understanding of the social and community equity that comes out of these programs and getting these parents involved. So by coming to soccer and seeing how fun and how enjoyable it is that Southgate provides opportunities and things, we get more people that call with interest for swimming lessons, that spend more time at the playgrounds, that do more birthday parties, things there. So by doing this and doing it cheap and affordable and stuff, it's, as much as we're still trying to create income, we also are putting an investment in the community members to then participate more and be more engaged and be more related to their neighbors and be more inclined to talk to council or reach out to the recreation department to find what's going on. So I know a lot of it comes down to dollars and cents, but I really do sometimes think that gets lost in the shuffle is the social equity that can be built through this and the community driven benefits.
Yep. Well,
I agree 100% with you, Ethan. I really do. And that's the story we all need to tell to make sure that we don't get lost in the dollars and cents. I mean, at the end of the day, the dollar and cents are tax dollars and everybody has to afford that too. But it's not just dollars and cents. I get it. Absolutely.
Yeah. And because the team building, you know, we've all coached here, I think, some way, shape, or form. And obviously all the programming you're doing. The team building, it just runs it back into the community. It's community building. Yeah, for sure. It's round and around and around. So anyway, that's great news. So do you want to move on then to?
Yeah, it's a capital budget. So this more for Wayne and a few other ideas in here too, but just note that this was on the agenda package before last night's discussion on one of the facilities in the community. So the thought process was not swayed or anything by some of the discussions last night, but we can just go through it here. Just the capital budget for this year was the zero turn mower. We replaced that. So that's page 31 of 36. The old town hall RFP that went out. So where was on it here? The bleacher replacement and the basketball nets was on the capital here. We pulled that out and we put it in operations last year because of the COVID money. So we saved that kind of money by putting it in the operations. So that's why there's no expenditure on the capital side for the basketball nets and the bleacher replacement. Well, it's still in there at 4,000, but we actually switched that over to the red fund, and we ended up buying 6 bleachers instead of 4. Liam just hasn't pulled that out because I don't think he was 100% sure where the red funding was, how he was doing the red funding yet at the time of the capital. But so that's what was done this year. So 2022, which we're putting in the budget. So that's page 32 of 36, I believe. I didn't put any capital expenditures in on for equipment, everything, but we do have that pool grant out there, and we have the ball lighting grant applied for. Now, depending on the funding, both of them said you could get back up to 100% funding through these grants. We may not have to match anything to them, or we may have to. So that's kind of why they're in there. They're both put in against the reserve funds, so it won't be a hit to the taxpayers or anything, but in case we do have to match some funds to it, that'll be out of the reserves. But that's the projects that are on the books for 2022.
Okay, great.
2023, this is where there was a change that Liam had down there about the Zamboni or the Olympia replacement. My thought process has changed, and I'll get into it a little bit more on the 10-year growth of the rec department, that hockey's kind of going by the wayside. We already amalgamated our minor hockey teams. COVID, we've lost 5 teams due to vaccinations, so rentals are down. So the purchase of a Zamboni or Olympia was put in there on the asset management plan on its depreciation, not really how far we could extend the life. So I put it down 2 or 3 more years, but where I'm replacing the placeholder where the Olympia was is a truck and trailer replacement. The trailer was due for that year too, but as we gain more parks in the next near future, from the purchase of the last trailer to now, I realized that the value of a dump trailer that hauls our equipment would be way more beneficial to us hand bombing trees, us, buying topsoil and a few more things. But the truck replacement process of getting the hand-me-downs isn't really working. The last truck we got was a hand-me-down of a hand-me-down, and that truck has cost us over $4,000 in repairs this year, $2,000 the year before. So either the rec department's got to start looking after our own equipment, or we need to make sure that we're getting one of the better trucks passed down. But if we're going to a new trailer, the truck we're probably looking at isn't a half-ton truck. We'll probably be looking at a 3/4 ton truck to haul that trailer and equipment. So that's in there, but that's not a decision for this year's capital budget. That's just put in there for future decision making.
Okay.
The next point I had this on here for, and this reflects last night's discussion, was in 2024 on page 33 is that multi-purpose community facility. And it was brought up last night that it's put in there. There's nothing tagged for it. There's no report for it. There's no nothing for it. Well, I put it in before that meeting last night to say that might as well be pulled out of the capital project plan, because we will not be building a multi-use facility in 2024. The reason that was put in there was it was put into this capital forecast in the year 2013 and it was earmarked for a new theater / pool / administration building / new hall. Well, unfortunately, the council at the time didn't push the theater issue, didn't push anything. And then the council of this day is trying to get to the new theater, but this decision on the old town hall has affected a pile of growth in this community. That earmark of 2024 was also to go alongside with the new medical facility. We're building a new medical facility next year. We're still discussing the old town hall. We could have been building this new hall, new pool, new admin building, and new hall if we had pursued this way back. And no offense, it was the council prior to the council we have now that stalled it, but we just never picked momentum up. But so it might as well be taken right off, because there's no way what we earmarked that for, we've already replaced. So we've band-aided the administration office that was part of that plan. I just applied for a grant for the swimming pool to rebuild the pool building, so we're not looking at redoing a new pool anymore. And the pressure is to fix the old theater, so we're not building a new theater. So that might as well be taken right off the capital forecast, and maybe we take a run at a new facility when we have listed down here in 2028. We have a community center that was that 12,000 or 12 million was earmarked for the second phase of possibly replacing the arena, because in 2028 it'll be 54 years old. And unfortunately, by 2028, now our swimming pool will be 62 years old. So maybe we'll get a group that's rallied behind Save the Swimming Pool by that point. But it's just what we earmarked it for, we've now lost the opportunity to build that. So my recommendation is we take that off. And the reason I'm kind of bringing it to this meeting is that I'm not at the Capitol meeting next week. I'm in Banff sitting in a hot tub. So I'm hopefully the rec committee, I'll talk to Liam and Dave about it, that maybe this is relayed to the council in the budget deliberations, but whenever it's brought up last night as a bit of leverage towards going towards fixing the old town hall, it might as well not even be in the budget, because what it was budgeted for is long gone. And that's the only other point to this capital forecast is if you get down to year 26 and 27. And this is where I'm finding new information. So arena refrigeration equipment has gone through the roof with COVID, same as every other building, materials and everything. But my refrigeration guy was here and he says, you know, your condenser is undersized. And I said, well, we put it in new when I started. It's 25 years old. And he says, yeah, you should be looking at replacing that. But I should give you a heads up that that piece of equipment that you paid $25,000 for 25 years ago is now $100,000 for one piece of equipment. Yeah. So if we're looking at extending this facility beyond 54 years, and that we're going to be start soaking some pretty decent money back into the equipment in this facility. So I think this 10-year capital forecast is a little it's not really a hard kick, but I think it's a more accurate kick at where we have to go in the next 10 years than say what the one last year was. So I don't know if there's any questions with that, but it's just a more accurate portrayal of our 10-year forecast.
So Kevin, do you think, you mentioned hockey's kind of dying? Do you think that that'll be on the upswing with the newer population coming in? Because it is becoming a sport that all ethnic people are getting into once they start to learn to skate. Do you think it could go up? Or Ethan, do you have an answer?
Kevin, you answer first, but I have a little bit of insight to this maybe.
Yeah, we disagree on this. That's why the interest is which one goes first. So hockey's changing in my mind. Because we amalgamate it with Flusherton, the kids are heading that way too. But what I'm seeing is the 35 to 55-year-old age group is not coming back to hockey once they have kids. It used to be that, you know, you had your children young, you missed your 25 to 30-year-old years of hockey, you come back to hockey and played old timers and a bit of fun and whatever. But the old timers groups are just not coming back because there are other things to do, or like myself, we're having kids later in life. So as a 54-year-old, I'm still going to minor hockey. I'm not thinking about playing using the arena for pickup hockey. And so we've almost lost a whole age group of use. Coming in, it will hold our own, but it'll limit what our future is in recreation. And I think Dave and I've talked this before. I think you'll find that our community is hindered by Shelburne. So where Shelburne is, if Shelburne was where Dundalk is, Shelburne would be the prime focus of recreation. They'd have a new facility, they'd have an indoor pool, they'd have all the wonderful things, because Dundalk is far enough away from Orangeville that Shelburne wouldn't use Orangeville. So Shelburne uses Orangeville. Shelburne's recreation has almost remained stagnant because they don't need it. They keep talking about putting a second pad on in Shelburne, and it keeps getting pushed back because they're getting less and less number of kids playing hockey. So they may never add that addition on. The center between Collingwood, Owen Sound, Orangeville, and Hanover is exactly Flusherton. Flusherton's the same distance everywhere. It has the high school, it has everything right there. So my vision is that if we ever go to a multi-use, large community facility, we'll be partnering with Flusherton or Shelburne. And that's where Shelburne's location really hinders what could be. Because I think Dundalk would go to Shelburne before they even head north to Flusherton. It's just because of the people buying the homes come from south, they're used to going south. So that'll be an interesting process going forward on where we build, or if we build, or what our needs will be going forward with hockey arena. I lean towards us building the field house and Flusherton building the arena based on their geographical area. And a field house in Dundalk would then draw Shelburne our way, not Orangeville's way, on the secondary sports, soccer, baseball, lacrosse, and all that stuff on a field house. So that's my vision of where we're heading. But Ethan's a little more optimistic on the hockey side of things. So I'll let Ethan go now.
Not tremendous. Actually, I agree with almost all of that, Kevin, especially that the first point you made about that lost sort of generation of hockey players. That you're right. We're not getting the parents that are coming back and playing. I am more optimistic with potential new participation in hockey. Now, I can't project what the trends of the continuation of new one. The interactions I have with families and kids and parents is that they are very interested and warm to the idea of trying hockey and participating in hockey, and not just hockey, but skating and ice-related activities. Now, that doesn't mean that they're going to try it. That might mean that they try it once and go, I'm out, I'm done, right? So a lot of this also hinges on what not just local minor hockey, but hockey across the board, across the province, across the country does, and what they plan for the future. If they continue to head down the path where I know they are doing more to engage minority groups and new to Canada groups and other populations that they haven't typically done, but it is still an elite sport, and not just competitive level, it's an elite class sport. I see them heading down the path that golf was going for a while, before golf sort of pulled their head out of the sand and said, we need to figure out a way to get young people playing this sport or golf is going to die. Now, the pandemic helped golf, unlike every other sport that got hurt by it. But unless hockey really decides to take a stand and say, how do we get more kids participating? How do we try to make it more affordable? Which again makes it tough whenever the facilities cost what they cost. That's the challenge. But I think where Kevin and I disagree a little bit is that I think there is more appetite for new participation in the sport. I just don't know if the barriers that are currently in place around hockey are insurmountable. Like if people can get past those barriers. I mean, as far as accessibility, like timing, getting there, cost. So I am more on the optimistic side of that as well. I'm sort of torn somewhere too. Like I understand Kevin's point with the high school and everything being down there. I just don't know what Grey Highlands is planned or capacity to run that as it should, where I think the way we're building as a recreation department, and we have the increased population, and if Shelburne continues to sit on their hands, do we need to? We don't have to necessarily worry about all of Flesherton coming here, all of Shelburne coming here, all of whichever direction coming here. If we build enough of a base, if our population gets to 5,000 or 6,000 people, is that enough to support it? I'd like to think it is, and then you really only need to pull a few players from those other areas, not a whole team of players from those other areas. But the big red flag is definitely that those other groups that will take the late times, right? Those 35 to 50-year-olds. If we're not getting those, then your 9 to 10 or 9 to midnight time slots aren't being used as efficiently. But again, it all depends what the growth of town turns into and what hockey goes. Now, if minor hockey decides to take more of an approach to local league and focus on not traveling as much, I see that increasing participation. But I also see where Kevin's heading too, and saying that hockey is putting itself in a position to be a regional sport where everyone goes and plays out of a big center, unless you're local league hockey who plays out of one small arena. And basically everyone goes to Owen Sound and they have AA all the way down to double D, and they divide your teams up and you play Orangeville, you play Hanover, you play Collingwood, that type of thing. So I am more optimistic, but there's a lot of variables in it.
Okay.
Question,
Brian?
Mr. Chair?
Yep.
Just,
go ahead.
I'm not going to revisit any of that because I mean, there's lots to like in both of those scenarios. But I would like to drill down a little bit into the capital budget for next year. And Kevin's probably tired of hearing me say this too, but we're not just Dundalk. So how much of that capital budget is getting used for the rest of the township? Crickets.
Well, the thing is, though,
And to be clear,
This is our-
I get it.
this is our 10-year, though. You got to remember the 10 years prior when we spent all that money the other way, too. Like, that's the problem looking at going that way is they're 10 years ahead of us. They got that brand new facility and we negotiated into it, and the Optimus Hall did a beautiful job building that hall. So they're ahead of us on the hall. And so it's, yes, it's hard to balance year to year on what they're doing and put that in there that they see it. And that's, and I'm sure you deal with it more than me, is because people say that, but they kind of forget that that $1 million was 10 years of pretty substantial commitment to Mount
Yep.
Forest, to that west side. So,
Yep.
and we're probably going to have to go, you know, I'm sure they're going to come after the new pool when they build the pool. They just haven't done it yet.
Yeah.
So,
Right.
and I don't know, like maybe they're doing the pool internally, because I thought they were building that this year.
Well, they're starting their fundraising program for, you're
So
talking
they'll
about the
do-
Mount Forest pool? Yeah,
Yeah.
it's going to be on that for next year. No, to be clear, I'm not looking for equality.
Yeah.
I
No.
just wondering, like, is there any investments in the Holstein Park or the, or, you know, any of that? That's just all I'm looking for.
So the investment we put in the Holstein Park is in the operation. We put new roof, we have new roofs to go on the bathrooms, redo the bathrooms. We redid the fence and that, yeah, it's the next decision for Holstein Way for us, because we don't run the Optimus Hall, is what to do with that pavilion. Like, do we invest in it? Do we, you know, where do we go? But, you know, the balancing act there is we're renting it out cheaper than the Optimus are. So we still do get some rentals there. So are we taking away from the Optimus Hall, or the Optimus Hall taken away from us, or is it balanced? You know, that's the thing. But, you know, we do
Different kinds of
recognize
facilities.
operationally that we want to head that way. And I see Ethan's hand in the air. I know what he's, you know, we have plans for programming that way. The leadership program would probably be based out of there because of the water side of it. Like that water
Sure.
feature is wasted space. And that, but how do we staff a boat launch, a kayak rental place, a canoe rental place? You know, that's been, you know, and I have discussed that in the rec meetings now for 10 years about
Yep.
the potential of that pond, the mill pond and everything. It's just, how do we do it and how do we make it work? But do you want to add to that, Ethan? Go ahead, or did I take your whole comment?
Ethan?
Yeah, you're pretty close on that one, Kevin. No, Brian, I do like that you bring that up, that you're not looking for the equality stuff. You're just looking for the what also comes to that area with the look at doing everything this way. And that's one thing I realized from programming, that we're underserving Holstein, but again, we're also underserving Dundalk, and I'm here every day, right? So from your follow-up question to you is, I know this is capital related stuff, but do you think the lack of or the planning of investment out there belongs with programming or belongs with infrastructure side of things? Because if we think that what we have is adequate out there, then I think we need to look at what can we provide services wise.
No, I would definitely say that the West End, from a Southgate perspective, is infrastructure based, because Mount Forest, and I sit on the Mount Forest Rec Committee. I'm the Southgate rep for the Rec Committee in Mount Forest. They very much consider Southgate part of their catchment, or at least the west end of Southgate, as their catchment area for services, and whether it's camp, whether it's swimming, whether it's hockey, whatever. And so, no, I think the West End is well served in terms of programming for the most part. I mean, there's always pockets, right?
Yep.
But I'm just looking to make sure that the physical infrastructure, and, you know, the Holstein Park always comes to mind, to make sure that that infrastructure doesn't deteriorate for lack of maintenance. That's all. I agree 100% with Kevin that Mill Pond is a gem, you know, in waiting, but nobody has an empty check, right? So it's Yeah, it's a tough one, but just to make sure it doesn't get neglected, that's all. And that's all I'm looking for. And it sounds like you haven't, so that's good. Thank you.
We found that with the library too. You know, we pay into the library. It's kind of wreck. You know, people like to read while they're kayaking or whatever. A lot of programs, a lot of them go to the Mount Forest. It's a county library. And
Yep.
how are we as a library in Dundalk underservicing them? Well, I know for a fact some people do use the library programs, but a lot of them go there too. So I never knew that the pond there was actually talked about to put up canoe rentals, and it's been talked over many, many years. So that would be a great thing, because I go there and it's beautiful, close to home. So yeah, I tend to agree. The infrastructure is what's needed out there to keep up, because the infrastructure won't give place for the programs, right? It goes hand in hand. So, okay. Any other questions with this, or Wayne, go ahead.
I don't have a question per se, but just I'll give you a little information. I don't know how closely you follow Shelburne issue. Right now, the main focus has been from the town of Shelburne. They want to take over the recreation building and committee, and there's no real idea of how they're going to do that financially or structurally. So that has kind of thrown that into a fairly significant tailspin, with all the municipalities being quite cool in their reception to it. So I guess I'd say to you, in planning, just move forward, because who knows where that's going or how it's going to play out. This could go on, who knows, this could go on for quite some time with the tug of war over this kind of thing. It's unfortunate, but I think you're right. There'd be very little plan for the future until that's settled, and that could go on for who knows how long.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know how closely you follow it, but that's kind of where the state of affairs. So just go ahead with your planning and stuff, and with your growth and the planning, let's move forward.
Okay, great. Thank you. So is that it for capital budget, Kevin? Do you want to move on, or?
You'll be discussing it again, I think, Wednesday at the council. So
yeah. Now, with those placeholders, did you say Liam has that information to take out?
no, I was kind of hoping Dave wanted to talk to me this morning. He hasn't got around phoning me, and I told him that we'll probably be discussing at the rec committee and that. So I just don't know who's going to champion my thoughts on the multi-purpose facility while I'm sitting in the hot tub in Banff.
Okay.
Looking at the mountains.
Just keep your video off while you're sitting in the hot tub, and you'll be all right.
Yeah.
Turn it.
Show us the mountain.
Show us the mountain. Maybe, I don't know.
Yeah.
That, so yeah, I haven't really talked to David, but I thought we were gonna have that discussion this morning. But it'll never be built. It might as well be off. I don't know why we've kept it on there, really, because it kind of stalled whenever we applied for the grant to the old town hall. As soon as we applied to that grant, it really should have been taken off then, because that'll never be built now.
Mm-hmm.
So,
okay.
Well, never is a long time, but I don't
I'm
disagree. I don't disagree.
I'm taking a run at it in the year 2028, so it'll come up again, but it'll be something different than. Won't be a new theater, because hopefully the theater problem's solved by then. So
Hopefully.
Yeah. Okay.
So last thing on the agenda, I think, is the work plan. That's just in there. That's our monthly report. So we've got the parks closed now. Our next plan is to try and get programming back in the odd, which will be the after school program, the seniors programming, get a few more things going in there now that the weather's changing. 30-day plan is, we're still dancing around COVID. We could still close the arena based on numbers, but I think they're going to try and keep everything open from what you hear. But the challenges in there. We lost 5 hours ice rentals to people not getting double vaccinated, so that hurt. We picked up some here and there, but rentals are certainly down. The arena column repair is still in there. I know Triton keeps sending people over to look at it, and they can't get anybody to tell us how to do it, but it's being worked on. The old town halls, obviously, it's still there. It might go away soon. Facility accessibility comes up in the year 2025, so we still have a few buildings, but if we get these grants, that'll pretty much tidy most of that up. One of the new ones is the arena booth suppression system. So the fire suppression system in the booth can no longer be serviced. It's apparently outdated. They will not replace it. So we either spend $8,000 fixing that to keep French fries and the grill in there. But what most people are doing are switching to the air fryers, the commercial air fryer, same price as replacing the hood and the fan and everything. And you don't need fire suppression system. So that'll be coming up. If anybody ever looks at reopening the booth, but that might be an if too, because with no games in here, you're not making any money in the booth. So I just don't see who would even take that on in the future.
Right.
But the big push will be the fair. If the fair thinks they need to sell fries, or if they can sell beef on a bun, will be kind of the next pressure on that decision. Some of the accomplishments that we've got done, we got hockey back playing. Some of the sound panels that Barb's been wanting upstairs in the odd, we have 25 of them built, and we covered them to try them for the election with ground tarp or ground fabric, the black fabric that you put landscaping fabric.
Oh, okay. Yep.
It worked.
Yep.
But now we got to find something that's, proper cloth material to cover it and finish them all up. But the 10 we did put up did actually help quite a bit. So if we get the 25 up, that might help with the sound. We got that grant applied for to move the ball lights and build the cricket field out on the soccer fields. We had a big issue with TSSA wanting us to change some issues on the ice plant, and they're all completed now. The door was the big cost at $1,000, but we've got that tidied up. So that's sort of where the work plan's been for the last month and going forward for the next month.
Okay. That one column, the arena column repair, how is that going?
That's the thing. We've had, Oz has had 3 different people looking at it, and he's yet to give us a plan. The structural engineer guy didn't like any of them. We had to fix them all. Oz come, he thought there was only 2 or 3. The first guy he had looked at it, said, "Oh yeah, that's bad. I don't know how to fix it." And then he brought up another guy who works in the timber business, and so yeah, I'm not too sure when we're going to get that plan, but it'll come out of reserves when we get to that point, so it won't be a hit to the tax dollars.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? Nope. Okay, we'll move on then. New unfinished business, if there is any, from anyone. Nope, seeing nothing. Correspondence, there is none. Members' privilege. I'm very happy to see the report with all the programming. So that's awesome, and it's in all kinds of sports. So it's a good thing to see for the community. The next meeting is in the new year, I would assume. So Alicia, do you have that down yet, or is it?
They haven't been scheduled yet, so it'll just be to be determined.
Okay, awesome. So if there's nothing else, be it resolved that the committee adjourn the meeting at 3:25.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, everyone.
Keep up the good work.